Good afternoon and welcome to this installment of the Boost Your Skills webinar series, where we enlist the advice of specialist experts in order to help you make the most out of your university experience and to acquire the skills to help you succeed and develop both professionally and on a personal level. I'm Siddharth and joining me is Jenny, and we are your Boost Your Skills team. This event is in webinar format, so you'll not be able to turn on your cameras and mics, but we would still love to hear from you through the chat function. This is a safe space with no judgments being passed, so please feel free to ask questions without fear or worry. If you are still anxious, feel free to message Jenny or myself anonymously and we will pass it on. The webinar will consist of an interactive presentation and some time at the end for Q&A. The event is being live streamed to our YouTube channel, so don't worry if you've missed something. We'll be sharing a link to the video after the event. And finally, a massive thank you to all our attendees who pre-submitted questions. Our guest today is the brilliant Dr. Audrey Tang, who is a chartered psychologist and award-winning author. She hosts the podcast Retrain Your Brain for Success and is a regular speaker at both national and international conferences in resilience and organizational well-being, amongst other things. Audrey's books are now available on your student store with a 15% discount, and she's in the process of writing another, and we are delighted to offer you all an exclusive sneak peek today. So now, without further delay, I'd like to hand over to Audrey.
Thank you so much, Siddharth, and thank you all for joining me. Today, we are talking about boosting your emotional management. Why? Well, as James Hunt said to Niki Lauda, you have more power if people like you. Psychologically, there is a good reason for this. It's known as the halo effect. If people found you looked nice, they tended to ascribe other positive traits to you. You were trustworthy, you were friendly, you were generous, you were all of those things. And that was based on attraction alone. But that's the same thing. If someone likes you, strangely or maybe sadly, they will allow you to get away with a lot more. The opposite is also true. If somebody doesn't like you, it's known as the horns effect. And therefore, what can happen is they attribute you with all of these unpleasant traits, and these things may be really unfair, but they don't like you, and that's their perception. So what I wanted to talk about today was ways in which we can boost our emotional intelligence. And in particular, this is about respecting, these are the 3 R's, recognizing and responding to our emotions. Why? Because that boosts our emotional intelligence, because that helps us express our emotions more effectively and better handle interpersonal interactions. You don't have to love everybody that you work with or that you go to uni with or that you're in groups with, but you do have to get on with them enough to be able to get the task done. And so part of that emotional intelligence may be seeing through the things that cause personality clashes and actually understanding, well, okay, I can't get on with them, but they're really good at data analysis. Can't get on with them, but they're really good at presentations. And just respecting the skills that they are good at. You don't need to be friends outside it. Of course, it's lovely if you are, but you really don't have to be. So emotional intelligence and emotional management, it's all about making that gray area a little bit clearer. Now, as you can see, I have a flip chart. I'm very old school. I will not be using slides in this session. So if you want to maximize the screen so you can see the chart, that will be probably the most helpful. All of the exercises I cover will be in a workbook, which will be sent out to you after the session. So you don't have to write them all down right now. But what I do invite you to do is do the exercises with me, because that way you can also ask me questions about them. All of those exercises, as I say, are in the workbook, which means that you can revisit those exercises or do them with other people whenever you wish. The reason I bring out a workbook is partly because I'm a coach, which means that a lot of my clients like to go away and revisit some of these exercises 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line. But also as a trainer, especially for organizations, I sometimes find that leaders want to teach their teams, and therefore they can use those exercises and work with their clients or their teams in their own time. So that's the same with you. If you want to do this with your teams, if you're teaching a class, or alternatively, if you want to do this with your family, these can work as well. So that's what the workbook is there for. What I tend to do is I will respond to Q&A and I will respond to chat. However, I prefer to do so at the end. You will notice that sometimes if a chat comes up, I get a bit distracted and I'd rather not do that. But I don't want you to sit through the session thinking I've got a really good question and then not concentrate on the rest of what I'm saying because you're thinking of the question. So write it down and put it in the chat anyway, and I will get there. Now, before the session started, a number of you sent in some questions, and I am going to actually address those answers in the session itself. So I just want to read out some of the questions that I will be covering in today's webinar. The first is, if I have a negative emotion or an emotion that's distracting, how can I quickly deal with it? I will be talking about ways to manage our emotions at the point of crisis. How do I keep a steady state of emotion? Again, I will teach you ways to manage emotions outside crisis and long term. What practices help build emotional strength, and what are the foundations of good mental health? Well, the foundations of good mental health are whatever makes you feel well. I know that sounds really woolly, but in the science of happiness, what Martin Seligman has studied is something called positive affect. This is not the same as positive emotion. Positive emotion is something that can be triggered immediately. So you get a prize or a present or something lovely and you feel really happy. That's a positive emotion, but it dissipates quite soon. The state that's of positive affect is one that is steady, it's constant, and it's uplifted. What Seligman correlates this with is life satisfaction and a sense of fulfillment. And that's kind of what we're looking for when we're talking about that steady state of emotion. So foundations of good mental health are whatever gives you that state of positive affect, and to know that our state will ebb and flow. That's perfectly normal, but a lot of the exercises I give you will hopefully help you bring them back up to the positive affect state again. What practices help build emotional strength? I'm going to be covering those as well. How do I remove emotions from a task and stay on track? If I don't answer that specifically in these exercises, please ask specifically what with an example later on, but hopefully I will cover that. And how can deep-seated emotions be addressed even if they're hurting? I'm going to get to that quite early on in today's session. So the key thing is, these are the key things I'm going to cover, the 3 R's. Why we respect emotions? Well, why do we respect emotions? We have to, because emotions, although we're scared of them, especially the negative ones, emotions are simply like a warning light in the car, like your indicator light telling the other person that you're going to go left or right, or like the petrol light coming on saying you need to fill up with petrol. All they are is they're telling us something is not quite sitting right, or something is sitting very right. Respect it, respect that. And if you respect that and don't try and push it away, you might be able to learn from it. And so we are going to be looking at how we can better respect our emotions. But I am saying to you, we do need to respect them. I'll tell you why we don't in a minute, but we do need to try to learn. We need to recognize them. We need to recognize what emotions we're experiencing. And those emotions, a lot of the time, we're really good. Our brains are really good at giving us a top line. What I mean by top line emotion is I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm frustrated. I'm really angry. Those are top lines. What we actually mean when you say I'm tired, what we might actually mean underneath that is, I am so upset that I have to explain this to you again. I have explained this to you 50 million times before and you still don't get it. And then we just go, I'm tired, I'm just so tired. But if you're tired, the solution to that is having some sleep. That is not helpful. That's not recognizing what's actually going on so you can find a helpful solution. We need to go below the emotional top line. So that's why I'm going to be talking about recognizing emotions. And then related to that is we need to respond appropriately. Yes, wouldn't it be lovely if someone shouts at you, you shout back and there we go, we're all happy, but that's never going to work. And it's not going to work for 2 reasons. One, it's really not a good look, okay? It's really not, and it doesn't solve the problem. 2, if somebody older than you, with more experience than you at bad behavior, does something to upset you, and you decide to knee-jerk react back, they've had so many more years, more experience at being horrible, it's really not going to work. So that's another reason. However, if you throw them off guard by managing your emotions, And I will give you a simple tip right now that I use all the time, and it really, really works. If somebody says something, and as you can see, my ethnic origin is Malay, in fact, like Michelle Yeoh, so good for her for winning in the Oscars. So I'm Malaysian, I look Chinese, and yes, I experience racism. It's sometimes unconscious. And a really simple way of actually calling somebody out without saying, did you say something that was racist? Instead of saying that, I simply ask, I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please? I don't think I quite caught you. Would you mind repeating that, please? That is a really simple phrase. It breaks the moment, and that person really has to think about what they just said. So again, even if someone is so badly behaved and they think they can get away with saying something like that, making them say it twice with a polite, really sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you repeat it, please? That's a great way of diffusing a situation just like that. So that is simply one way of responding. There are many others. I will teach those to you in today's session. Then, related to that, we do need to express our emotions effectively. Many reasons why we don't. I'll get to those too. And handling interpersonal reactions, because whilst we don't have to get on with everybody, humans are social creatures. We will at some point probably need to call on somebody else for help. We have many more people touch our lives than we actually realize. So, for example, my own PhD supervisor said, because my PhD was on emotional labor, which is where you put on an emotional display as a teacher or as a nurse because it's expected of you. But one of the things we were talking about were the different jobs that people do and how those jobs affect us. And if somebody wasn't in the university changing the toilet paper or putting new toilet paper in, we'd have a problem. Many more people touch our lives than we actually realize. And so it really helps to handle our interpersonal reactions and interactions. Another thing, it's a lovely little meme that you will have seen on Facebook quite a lot, and that is people may say all the right things and talk a really good talk, but if they don't treat waitresses, if they don't treat serving staff, if they don't treat other people well, then it says a lot more about them. So handling our emotions really helps. Now, emotional intelligence, Goleman, if you want the reference, Goleman, Daniel Goleman, he talks about how it can be broken down into 4 key areas. Perceiving emotions, being able to interpret and understand what you're seeing, reasoning them, thinking about them, processing those emotions, understanding what they mean and what to do about it, and managing it. And so today's session is going to be broken down into those categories. Now, the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is that humans have a need to connect. Now, I'm a FIRO-B profiler. That's a relationship profiler. The FIRO-B is similar to the MBTI in that it gives you a certain score. It's a psychometric, but in particular, I look at relationships. But Schutz, who wrote the FIRO-B, did say that the reason he wants to look at relationships is relationships are fundamental to human existence. They are as fundamental to living as food and water is. The difference is, and this is what people don't understand, is we have a certain degree of interaction that we want. Now, to borrow a term from trauma research, which is known as the window of tolerance, I'd like you to think of emotions in this particular way, or even relationships in this particular way. We have in the middle there an optimal amount. And this can be of people in our lives, so it might be relationships. It might be emotional arousal. It might be of stress that we can manage, because we can perform well under pressure sometimes, so it might be pressure, but we have an optimal amount of it. The reason why it's called window of tolerance is because that optimal amount changes. It changes depending on our past experience. It changes depending on our preferences. It changes depending on our personalities. So each one of us will have a different window. Some of us, if we love having loads of people around us, we might have quite a broad tolerance for stimulation, for arousal, for friendships. But those of us who just don't like people, and that's okay, might be very narrow, and that's all right. But what does happen is if we get too much, we go into hyper arousal. Too many people, I need to just go away and sit down in a dark room for a while quietly. I need that. I deliver a lot, I speak a lot, I see a lot of people, but then I often need about a week to recover from that. So we go into hyperarousal, or if we haven't seen people and we miss them, we go into hypoarousal. And that's a feeling of sort of sadness. Or if we're talking about arousal, it's feeling of meh and apathy and not wanting to be part of something. So be aware that what causes us difficulty and challenge in our life, we tend to think it's overstimulation. We tend to think it's stress and burnout and the hyper kind of side of things. But being sad, being lonely, that's just as important. And in fact, that's become more prevalent since the pandemic. So be aware of both. We all have an optimal level, but we can have too much and we can have too little. And when we have either one of those two, we do need to do something about it. But this is what I want to give you. Now, why is it we struggle with understanding emotions in the first place? If we are such naturally social creatures, you would assume we'd all be very good at it. No. And that is because what tends to happen is we're not taught. We're not taught. Can I have a show of response? I don't know whether you can show any responses or anything like that, but maybe you can type yes into the chat. As a child, were you often told, calm down, shh, inside voice, calm down? If you've been told that a lot, it is often because it's uncomfortable for other people if we're emotionally excitable, shall we say. And because they never told us to manage it, they just said, calm down. Okay, this is fine telling me to calm down now. I've got a number of things that can help me calm down, including, I've got a breathing ball to use if I want to. I'll play with this later. But as a 3-year-old child, calm down. How exactly do I calm down? But no one teaches you that. So all we get to think about is emotions are bad. I mustn't be loud or excitable or happy. And this is a little exercise I want you to think about. And this comes from acceptance and commitment therapy. And I want you not just to think about calm down, but I want you to think about some of the other phrases you may have been told as well as that. So we got calm down, but we might also have, don't be so stupid. Don't be so silly. Oh, stop playing about. You might have had those phrases as well. Or don't laugh too loudly. Or shh, people don't like it when you shout. All of those other things, they form a critical voice in our head. And we carry that around with us. And acceptance and commitment therapy would ask you to write those phrases down. Yeah, keep calm and carry on. That's a great one. Keep calm and carry on. All of those things. And I will write this on the back now. So let's use that. If you want to just, behave, love it. Keep calm, carry on. Behave, good. Any others? Calm down. 1 or 2 more. Keep quiet. Yeah. They're very familiar to me as well. No one cares. Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. No one cares. You're too much. Okay, you're too much. I'm actually yes, what will people think of you? It will pass. Okay, good. I haven't got time to write all of those down, but you are absolutely right. I want to pick up on you're too much. Just very quickly, this is an aside. This is not to do with this session. But sometimes if you are always told you're too much, or you're told you're too sensitive, or you're hypersensitive, being a highly sensitive person, it's known as an HSP. An HSP, look it up. It is a thing. It is actually a gift. It just means you are super sensitive to other people. You're not weird, you're not strange, and you're certainly not too much. Okay, so just look it up. It's not part of this, but that's an extra special thing that a few of my clients actually have. So that's where I talk about it. Yeah, I don't have time for this. Girls out loud. Yeah, love that one. Answer fast. Oh, answer fast, I'm going to pick up as well. As a teacher, I'm a trained teacher, school teacher. One of the key things they always said was, if you are expecting students to answer, give them 6 seconds. And that's not a mixed ability nor a mixed nationality group. That's a bog standard English Caucasian cohort brought up in the UK. When you're teaching people whose English is a second language for them, which I think is just amazing, you need to give longer than 6 seconds. Why? Because they're translating what you're saying in their heads first, coming up with the answer and translating it back. So you need to be patient. So yeah, answer quickly is really not a great thing to say to anybody. So all of these things, I've written down some of them. This is what happens. So I'd like you just to think about this. We get these in our heads and they're there. We carry them around with us. And as you can see, I'm carrying it around with me. It's blinding me to everything else. I can't actually see you. I can't see what you're writing. We can go through life carrying that burden around with us. But worse still, because we were told it was bad, it was wrong, we push it away. We go, no, I don't want this. I don't want any of those things. And oh, you're too much. I must push it away. Be quiet. I'm too loud. I must push it away. All you're doing is you're exhausting yourself. So not only are you blocking your view, but you're exhausting yourself by carrying it around as well. What acceptance and commitment therapy will say is, lean into all of that. Lean into all of those things. Okay, what if you are just badly behaved sometimes? What if you are just loud? What if you are a little bit difficult? It's not a problem. It's really not a problem. And what if you are too much? Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's okay. It's okay. So what acceptance and commitment therapy asks you to start to do is to set this down. You still carry it, you still hold it, but you're not pushing it away all the time. Pushing it away is one of the difficult, inappropriate ways that we try and manage emotions. And I hopefully by the end of today will have taught you a few different ways we can start thinking about who we are, appreciating who we are, and managing all of those emotions a bit better. I'd like you to think about emotional management as being able to both contain and complete an emotion, and that comes from First Aid for Feelings, and it's a program created by somebody called Thor A. Rain. You can look them up. First Aid for Feelings, and Thor talks about both containing. So you contain an emotion when it's not appropriate to express it at that particular moment, but then you go back and you complete the emotion later at a time where you are better able to deal with it. And I will give you both strategies for containing and completing that emotion. So let us talk a little bit about perception. That's the place we're going to start, is how do we perceive emotions? Well, one simple task actually is to think about all the emojis. And how many emojis can you actually name? How many emojis can you actually name? Because if you can think of not just happy, sad, laughing out loud, but all of the feelings in between. So maybe happy also has surprise and love and peace and fulfillment and all of those things. You've got a whole vocabulary of emotions that you can begin to understand, perceive, and express. And if you study psychology, when they study language, one of the question marks they asked was, can Eskimos see different types of snow because they have a name for different types of snow? We just have snow, whereas they have many different words for it. So they have the understanding of the nuances of snow. And that's the same thing. The more emotions you can name, the more emotions you can begin to perceive and understand in yourself. And when you ask yourself, when you respect that emotion and ask yourself, what is it I'm feeling? You might be able to go, oh, actually, I'm not tired. I'm sad, or I'm in pain, or I'm guilty, or you find different things. And I'm going to show you the feelings wheel later on to go into that a little bit more in detail. But It's just more about, first of all, thinking about how many you can perceive, how many you can understand in yourself. The next thing about perceiving emotions is being aware that we do have some control over them. Now, I'm going to draw 3 pictures here. They're very bad. I'm not a very good artist. So we've got smiley face, we've got neutral face, and we've got sad face. Now, for smiley face, I'd like you to put not yet, but use a heart if you can. I don't know whether you can in on the emojis. I want you to use a thumbs up if you can. And I want you to use a clap if you can, if you've got those emojis. But what I want to see, or else 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3 is the other option if you haven't got these emojis on the webinar. If this is your resting face, okay, is your resting face resting happy face, resting neutral face, or resting sad face? 1, 2, or 3, or heart, thumbs up, and clap. Okay, good. 2s, 2s, 3s. Yay! Oh, good. We're getting some thumbs up and things. Good, lovely. Good. I'm seeing more. I'm seeing more of these 2 than 1. That's okay. That's okay. Okay, good, lovely. Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you. Now, that's fine. I am absolutely not telling you to change your face, all right? But I am telling you that your face is under your control. Your face is under your control. So me personally, you will see, generally I am smiley face. That is who I am. I'm often known as, or seen as, cute. I'm seen as a lot younger than I am. If you need to know, I'm 47. But people, because I'm short, I'm cute, people treat me like I'm a short, cute girl. So that really doesn't help. That really doesn't help me to be kind of smiley. What also really doesn't help me is when I'm coaching. Because when you're coaching, people tell you some really awful things. And worse still than being smiley is I've got a nervous laugh. So if I'm uncomfortable, I get into, and that you can't do. You can't do when you're working with clients. You can't, A, smile at them and then laugh at them. What do you have to do? We have to manage it. It's under your control. So whilst I'm not saying you have to go around, if you're smiley, learning to keep a straight face and doing it all the time, I am saying that's one way of containing that emotion and one way of putting across a certain thing that you want other people to see. Now, that was my area of my PhD. That was emotional labor. That's the emotional management, because someone expects it. However, whilst you always need to retain your authenticity, retain your 1, 2, or 3, retain your smile, your neutral, or your face, resting sad face, you can change it. You can change it. I'm not saying you have to change it hugely. I would actually say if your face is naturally turned down, go to neutral. And the way you go to neutral is really simple. And you can do this with passport photographs, and it really helps. You simply go from sort of, you know, that passport photograph thing where I'm going to do it and it's going to look awful. You just look like that. If you clench your jaw together, it lifts your cheeks. I now take all my passport photos like that, and I don't look quite so much like a serial killer. So that's really good. Yeah, that's, oh God, I'm so sorry to hear that, Ruth, that a doctor was smiling unconsciously at the completely the wrong moment. I'm so sad to hear that. And this is exactly what can happen. Yeah, some people do just smile sometimes you smile when you're talking about trauma because you're covering up with humor. Remember, top line, humor is a top line as well, as is anger. But you can change this. You can change this. I have to for my work. I always remember who I am, but you can change it. So that's worth remembering. Okay. Now, with perceptions, I'm just going to share, as I say, the feelings wheel. So I'm going to share this with you right now, which I hope you can see. So top line emotions are these things down in the middle: happy, sad, disgusted, angry, fearful, bad, surprised. But as you go out with this feelings wheel, and this feelings wheel was created by Dr. Gloria Wilcox, and I really feel it's important to say her name because everybody is printing this feelings wheel. It's all over Amazon, and I'm just like, this poor woman has created this wheel and it's not being credited for it. So Dr. Gloria Wilcox. Anyway, wonderful, wonderful wheel. So fear, you're feeling fearful. Well, actually, do you feel scared or anxious or insecure or weak? or rejected or threatened? Do you feel any of those things? Or as you go through, so actually I'm feeling scared. Oh, I feel weak. Actually, maybe do I feel worthless? Or do I feel insignificant? Or do I feel inferior? Is that what's going on here? So this is where, if you use this feelings wheel just to guide you beyond the top line of the emotion that you can see here, and ask yourself, okay, when I'm angry, what is it? When I get angry, it's usually because I'm let down. And then when I feel let down, it's usually one of these two, betrayed or disrespected. And then you see, it helps me. Because if I'm just angry, I'm going to stop the share now, okay? But you can get this from, if you just Google feelings wheel. If you just think you're angry, but actually you're feeling betrayed or let down or disrespected, how on earth can you deal with that properly? If you just go, I'm angry, I'm just really, really angry. Well, okay, how do you deal with that? Well, tools to manage that feeling at the point of crisis. Doesn't stop you feeling betrayed. It doesn't stop you being betrayed either. Doesn't stop you feeling disrespected. Doesn't stop you being disrespected. But if you can go, right, I'm angry, and the reason why I'm feeling angry is because I'm feeling betrayed, then I can deal with it. Then I can deal with it. That way, you do need to do that little bit of extra work, that little bit of extra perception will help you understand what you're feeling and will help you deal with it a lot more effectively. So that's perception. Let's move on to reasoning and interpretation. Now, I know from speaking to both Jenny and Siddharth, one of the key things that's come up is a little bit of conflict resolution that people want. And this is a technique that can work as a form of conflict resolution. It is known as the house technique. I will talk you through it, but the reason why we need to reason through emotions is because we need to find the best solution. We actually need to move forward. What a lot of people think when it comes to resolving conflict is largely about winning. It's not. It's not. You may lose a little bit. I don't know whether anyone else can still see me. I hope you still can. But thank you for pointing that one out. If anyone else is having that problem, then I'm sure Jenny will hopefully be able to manage that. My screen is switched off. So thank you, Esther, for confirming. So when it comes to resolution, it's not about winning. It's about moving forward. You've got to remember that. We've got to remember that. So the house technique that we can use. The house technique starts off with the foundations or facts. Facts. In any dispute, there will be facts. And I don't mean so-and-so left at 3 o'clock because she's lazy. No, so-and-so left at 3 o'clock. Fact. Because she's lazy, opinion. Okay, work out the facts. Know what the facts are. Other facts may include the target or what you have to achieve. The fact there may be, I need someone to pick so-and-so up from school at 3 o'clock. The end, that's the fact. You need to know what you're working with. So what are the facts of the situation? The second thing is you need to build the structure. And the structure is where you talk about the situation. You explain the situation. And it might be explaining the situation of what you have to reach and what the other person interprets as the situation. Explanation is a two-way thing. Unfortunately, a lot of the time when people think about conflict resolution, they think I give the complaint and it's going to be resolved. That isn't always the case. Even in a bullying case, the bully has to be given an opportunity to reply. And that is just how it goes, unfortunately. And I know, as aggrieved as we may feel, that has to be done. So you need to have that explanation and that discussion of what you want. But with that, have an idea of what you want the resolution to be. So have an idea of what you want to happen. And that's where you get to the roof. So these are the walls, the explanation, and that's the resolution. But based on the explanation, whilst you've got an idea of your resolution, you may need to change that and tweak it, and you come to your agreement. So you come to your agreement at the top. The reason why we call it a house, though, is kind of you have to build up stage by stage. But the other thing is you have to live in it. You actually have to live in that resolution for a while, see if it works. So if it works, that's where this bit, sort of a double loop learning, is you live and you check back. Has it worked? Has this particular solution worked? And you might decide to check back on this solution after a week or 2 weeks. So let's put this into a context of maybe you're doing group work and one person's not doing any work, and that's the fact. You had a deadline and that person's work wasn't brought in, wasn't done in time. What happened? What's the explanation? What happened? What's going on? And then asking questions with that. Do you think it's going to happen again? If I ask you to do it in the next day, can you get it done? What's that resolution? So you go to the resolution, you agree to it, you make that agreement. Then you check back whether that's actually been done. And then if it hasn't been, you might have to come up with another resolution, which might be, okay, I will do that work, and I'll take your name off the group. So you come up to a different one. So you've got to check back, because if you don't check back, if you don't have this as part of this structure, what you'll end up doing is you'll come to a resolution and then it'll just fade off into nothingness, and you'll probably be even more upset than before if it hasn't worked out. Build in time for checking back. Emotional management is a little bit of work, unfortunately, but that's part of it. And another way of reasoning, and this is another way of also managing our emotions quite well in the moment. I'll give you more as well later on, but it's the acronym GRACE. And very similar to this, G stands for gather information. Gather the information. Find out the facts. Again, it's very similar. It's just some of you might remember a house, some of you might remember GRACE. It's either way is fine. Now gather the information, get the information that you need. The R is my favorite. Recall your original intention. Now I love that one, because recalling your intention is really important, because your intention is to get the project in. The intention is not to have a go at the person who didn't send their slides in. I know it feels like that, but it's not. Remember, it's about resolution and moving forward, not winning. Okay, attune to the important bits of the situation. Attune to the situation. Situation. Attune to the situation. And what attuning to the situation means, hang on, what facts are relevant and what facts aren't relevant? So this may be someone hasn't handed their slides in at the deadline, and then you go and speak to them and you ask them, okay, what happened? And they give you an explanation. And then the next thing is you say to them, okay, well, I'll give you 2 more days. Do you think you can get it done in 2 more days? And they go off on this great big long story about, oh, well, it was really hard for me to actually get those slides done because my computer didn't work. And that no one asked for that. No one asked for that. Attune to the situation. I asked you, I'm really sorry to hear that, but I asked you, can you get this done? And if you can't, that's okay. You just need to tell me. You need to attune to this situation. Don't get carried away. The way I attune to situations and make sure I attune to situations, especially in a situation where it's going to be emotive, I have an agenda. I write it down. Even today, because I know I go off on one, I have a script. I'm not following word for word, but I know the order in which I'm going to be speaking. So have that, and you can get drawn back into what you need to do a lot more easily. Okay. C, consider all options or all people. Options and people involved. This means the solution you come to has to suit everybody. This means the solution that you come to has to work for everyone, and there may be lots of different ways that that can work. So don't just go with, right, that's the only one we're going to do the end. No, actually consider everything and then make a decision based on there. It kind of just breaks down that model a bit more. And E, get it done, enact it. Enact. That's always the hardest bit when I deal with emotions. Everyone can go, yeah, reasoning, theory, love it. I understand the house model, all of those things. Right, you got to do it. You still got to do it. So you need to actually say, be clear with that person, look, it needs to be done in that particular way. The more upfront you can be, the better it is. That can actually stop a lot of these issues later on. So for example, right from the start of this session, I said I will do Q&A, but I'll write it down and I'll come to it later on. Another thing I tell my students is I am very happy to help you with your dissertation or whatever it might be, but you need to tell me exactly what bit you want me to look at and what you want me to do with it. Because if you just send me a 3,000 page dissertation, I'm not going to look at it because I won't know what you want me to do. You've got to appreciate that we've all got time that we can spend and time that we can't. So again, if you're clear up front, it saves a lot of this in the long run. But if you're not, you still need to be able to find a way to that form of clarity. And that's when we get to enact. So consider those two techniques when it comes to reasoning and working through emotions as well. All right. Now let's get to understanding our emotions. And within that, I'm also going to do a little bit of managing emotions at that point of crisis, but let's talk about understanding emotions. These are really important because let's say you've used your feelings wheel and you've recognized you're feeling betrayed and you recognize all of that. Well, you need to then kind of know what to do about that, because it's great to have the understanding, but you need to then work it through. And that's what this technique does. This is the ABCDE technique, and it is from rational emotive therapy. Rational emotive therapy. Now, rational emotive therapy only goes up to ABCD. Positive psychology added the E, but I'm going to give this to you as well. And I'm going to talk about it not just in terms of thinking, but I'm going to talk about it in terms of behavior too. So let's take an emotion. So we talk about the A is the activating event. Activating event. Excuse the fact my bell has just gone, I'm not going to answer it. They can leave it outside. The activating event. The activating event might be, for example, somebody saying, somebody criticizing you. Okay, somebody criticizing. Maybe they didn't mean it. We don't know. But work out what that activating event is. So you're feeling angry. You realize you're feeling disrespected, and you've worked it out. Someone criticized you. That was the activating event. The next question you need to ask yourself is the behavior. What does that behavior or that belief? So rational emotive is thoughts only. So they talk about belief. I like to talk about behavior as well. So your belief or behavior. So you've got the criticism. What does that lead to? Well, the belief might be I'm useless. I'm awful. I'm terrible. I'm so bad at this. Or your behavior might be I was criticized. So I'm not going to speak out again. I'm not going to put my hand up. I'm not going to do anything. Okay, belief and behavior. What's the consequence of that? Well, the consequence may be if you believe I'm rubbish, I'm useless, you might even end up giving up on something that you're really good at just because someone criticized you. That's the consequence. Another consequence might be your behavior of never speaking up again. And then people start thinking, well, Audrey doesn't know much. Audrey's very shy. I won't pick on Audrey to do anything useful. That can be a really dire consequence. So being aware of what caused the situation or the emotion to flare up, the belief and the behavior that falls out of it, and the consequence, hopefully is enough to move you into point D. And point D is to dispute it if you're thinking about thoughts, or do something different if we're thinking about behavior. So it might be criticism, belief, I'm stupid, consequence, I'll never put myself forward for anything again. Dispute, actually, that person criticized everybody that day. Or actually, I've done this class before, and that question was not a stupid question. That was an advancement on a question I'd asked in the past. Or actually, I know I'm not bad at this because I've been getting great marks in my tests. Dispute it. Or alternatively, do something different. Criticism, I'm not going to speak up again. Then people will judge me because I don't speak up again. Do something different. I'm just going to do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. I'm going to do something different. That's the ABCD. The E is the reason why positive psychology added this on, and I love this, is an energizer. Now, energizer, what this is got very little to do with ABCD. It's got very little to do with that process. But what will happen is you, and it's lovely, I'm loving the comments. You might go away from this workshop and go, yeah, really like this, really great at this. I'm definitely going to do it. And then life gets in the way and then you go, oh, not be bothered. And that's it. Energizers come from positive psychology and they help you to get to that state of positive affect. And those energizers are simply things like a bit of self-care, doing something you love, doing something that boosts you up a bit, doing something that makes you feel good. And I'm going to give you some energizers later on. Okay, I will get to that when I talk about building positive effects. So hop in that for a minute. I will get there. I'm going to jump on for now because I'm going to talk about managing emotions in the moment. You know this technique, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. NHS bangs on about it all the time. At that point of crisis, simply stop and look around. Name me 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. Don't get too hung up on which order it is. You know there's 5 senses. Just go around naming the things. The reason why that helps you at the point of crisis when you're really stressed is because saying calm down is not going to help. And if you are actually having to look around, flip chart, microphone, desktop, breathing ball, if you're actually having to do that, your breathing is going to calm you anyway. It's going to slow down anyway, naturally. So that's why 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 really helps. And you can actually even take someone through the beginning stages. If you notice them at the beginning stages of a panic attack, you can guide them through it using the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, which is lovely. Just saying to them, okay, name me 5 things you can see. And then let them look around and name those things. Then, all right, 4 things you can hear. And just speaking quietly and calmly with them. You can do that for yourself. So the one thing it does is it calms your breathing down anyway. Second thing, it gets you outside your head, because what's actually going on, all this is going on in here. This is overthinking. That's what's happening. So by focusing outside, we can't overthink. It breaks the cycle immediately. And the other thing that we need to do is it grounds us in the present. It makes us realize when we're looking at the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 things that we can see, feel, hear, touch, and taste. It makes us realize that whatever we're feeling threatened about isn't happening right now. And so that's another reason why it's really, really helpful. Okay, so that's your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, which I love. Stop and tip are 2 techniques from dialectic behavior therapy. Dialectic behavior therapy is there. It treats people with borderline. It's not known as borderline anymore. I think it's known as something personality disorder. But anyway, dialectic behavior therapy. The stop technique is, again, point of crisis. S stands for stop. Stop, just stop. And usually this one's really good if you're going round and round in circles with an argument, a circular argument. So stop. T, take a step back. Literally, it might be just go, whoa, okay, time out. Or it might be, okay, let's look at this problem a little bit more, less emotionally. Someone did ask that. Take a step back. The O is really important. It's both options and outcome. What is it I was trying to do here? And how many different ways is it I can get there? And the reason why it's so important to look at this O bit of it is because I will guarantee you one thing. If you carry on doing whatever it is you were doing, you're just going to carry on with that circular argument. If you do something different, I can't guarantee it's going to work, but I can guarantee it will move it in some way, and that will help. So look at your options, but always keep in mind that outcome. What is it you want it to achieve? And then proceed. Do it. Do it. Go and do that different thing, whatever that different thing is. Difference is quite a big part of this. It's choosing something different. Tip is something that you can do in the moment. It's known as TIP because it's easy to just remember as one big acronym, but you don't actually need to do all of those together. You might just like to do one of them. You might just like to do two of them. It's up to you. So TIP stands for temperature. That's T. And it's simply change the temperature. Now, I know when I get stressed, I get quite hot. So opening a window, that helps me. So if I'm very heightened in emotion, opening the window will help. Or if I'm feeling a bit down and a bit meh, then actually changing my emotional state by doing some star jumps or putting on some music and dancing around, changing the temperature, that can really help as well. Change the temperature. I change the intensity. Now, this might be channeling the intensity. So it might be, I'm feeling really frustrated, so I'm going to go out for a run. Fine, great, channel the intensity. And when that's dissipated a bit better, you can come back and deal with the root of the problem. You've contained the situation, now you can complete it. You can deal with what's going on. So change the intensity of what's happening. Again, you could do one, you could do the other. P, the first P, is paired muscle relaxation. Which is what it says on the tin. You go through from your toes up to your head, so it'd be squeeze and relax your toes, squeeze and relax your knees, squeeze and relax your bottom, squeeze and relax your shoulders, hands, eyes, jaw. My dentist tells me when I've been a bit stressed or overly emotional about something because I grind my teeth. But the reason why we do this is because our body often betrays our emotion, even though our brain might be thinking something else. So if you go through that body and squeeze and relax, you know the difference when it feels tense and when it feels relaxed. So already you can pick up on it. I know when I've been particularly emotional, I'm very tense up here. And so I now know if I'm feeling this, chances are it's because I'm stressed about something or emotional about something. So be aware of those things. And the last one is paced breathing. Now, paced breathing, I love this. I love my ball. I showed you my ball earlier. Just simply paced breathing is watching the ball, breathing out. Oh, sorry, breathing in, going mad, breathing out. So breathing in, 2, 3, 4, breathing out. And last time, breathing in and breathing out. These are really good at the point of crisis. Again, I use the ball because it's visual, gets you outside your head. So if you need to just do paced breathing, you can do it watching your hands if you wish. But another thing that you could do, I'm glad you feel relaxed after that. Another thing you could do is you can recite an affirmation. And I've got two favorite affirmations. One is, even if I can't control anything else, I can control my breathing. And I do that in one breath. So I breathe in and I go, even if I can't control anything else, I can control my breathing. Even if I can't control anything else, I can control my breathing. It makes me feel better. It makes me feel better. So if I don't have the ball with me, and I just say it under my breath. Another one of my favorites is breathing in. I cannot save people from themselves. Breathing in. I cannot save people from themselves. And that's usually very, very helpful when I've been trying to help somebody and they're just not accepting my help, which also gets me quite frustrated because I feel disrespected. So as you can see, I understand what's going on there, but you've still got to solve the issue. So managing it in the point of crisis. Now, I did say the energizers. This is a little bit of self-care, and this Spices challenge was given to me by a coach called Sharon Lawton. And this is 6 different ways we can think about our self-care. Because again, if we deal with this more often, if we do this on an everyday basis, or any one of these on an everyday basis, we build our positive affect. So as we build our positive affect, we feel better, we feel more satisfied. And yes, positive emotions can still push us up. But what also happens is that sense of positive affect builds a buffer to the challenges. So our lows happen, but they're not as low as they were before. So that's why the Spices challenge is really, really nice, because I don't think everybody recognizes what is self-care. When I ask what is self-care, the majority of people say, oh, it's yoga, or it's meditation, or it's a spa day. Yes, that's part of it. But some of that's really formal. It's not time to do that. And some people really don't like meditation and yoga anyway, and that's okay. So I'm going to give you 6 different ways you can improve your self-care. And I challenge you to do one of those a day. One of those a day. Pick any one and do it, because these might give you something that you've never thought of before. And then you might do it and think, I really like that. But if you do it and think, I really don't like that, it's okay. You're an adult. You don't need to do it anymore. Okay. So don't feel you really have to, but just give it a go. So the first S is spiritual. And that is, yes, breathing, meditations, guided affirmations. I love the ones on YouTube and they're all free. I listen to guided affirmations and I go out on my walk in the morning. I exercise in the morning. I find it easier to do that. It sets me up for the day better. So I get up a bit earlier in order to do that. But that's spiritual. Reconnect with yourself, reconnect with the universe, reconnect with your religion, reconnect with who you are. So that's all the things you can do there. Breathing, meditations. If you want to do a bit of yoga, go out for a walk, all of those things. Physical. Yes, the obvious is going for a run, going for a swim, sex with consent, all of that with consent. I repeat again, with consent. Physical. It might also be just doing some star jumps in your room. That's okay as well. It might be putting on your favorite piece of music and jumping around. That's great. Those things are quite important, but I'm going to give you one more, and that is work on your posture. Please work on your posture. Now, you're not going to be able to see. I'm going to try and tip this down just so you can see my, yeah, there we go. Right. I want you to stand up. And I want you to tell me if your hands are like mine as you stand up. And that means your thumbs are facing inwards, or if they're facing outwards like that. So forwards. They're either facing inwards or they're facing forwards. All right. So just stand up and just decide whether your thumbs are facing inwards or whether you're facing forwards. Now, I'll tell you what that's all about. If they are facing inwards, then you may think you're standing up straight, but you're not. I'm going to turn to the side. You're actually hunched over. When I turn my palms forward, my thumbs forwards, you can suddenly see my posture's improved. That's inwards, thumbs forwards. That's better posture. Why? This. The head is already 10 to 12 pounds. When it's bent over a mobile phone, it can go up to 27. And that means our posture is hunched over. And that is a real problem. Okay, real problem. So all I want you to do, okay, if you're facing outwards, then maybe you're pulling back too much, possibly, I don't know. So I'm loath to say, but what I will say is, if you can always just, when you're standing up straight, or even at your desk, roll your shoulders back and down, have your thumbs pointing forwards. That is going to be helpful for your posture. So think about P, physical, as well as thinking about your posture. Okay. I, intellectual. I love this one because no one thinks about this one. Intellectual is things like reading a book, or it's going onto YouTube, or coming into one of my sessions and learning something different. Audiobooks, absolutely, any of those things. Intellectual, stimulate the brain. Watch a film that you get really engaged in, or a documentary. Because the reason why I talk both about relaxation, which is like the spiritual side of things, or re-energizing, is because most people talk about relaxing as the only form of self-care that they know. But if you're like me, you might finish a project and be absolutely physically exhausted, and then someone comes up to you and goes, oh, well done for doing that. Now you can relax. When people say that to me, I want to punch them. I get really cross because I don't want to relax. I do not want to relax. I need to re-energize, but I don't want to relax. I'm not advocating punching anybody, by the way. I'm just saying that right now. Sometimes I forget that I'm not actually all that funny. So, but be aware that you can re-energize and you can relax. You can re-energize and you can relax. Therefore, some of these things about re-energizing. I like to do a course. I've literally done a course in sound healing, and I've bought myself some chimes and some Tibetan singing bowls, and I love it. I've learned something. So intellectual, that really stimulates me. That's really helpful. C is creativity. Or creative, rather. Sorry, creative. So spiritual, creative. Now, creative is poetry or dancing or music or anything that's self-expressive, but it can also be things like how you do your hair, or how you do your makeup, or what you wear. Any of those ways of expressing who you are, that can come under creativity. So don't forget those things. Include those things in your choice of what is going to make me feel good. And expressing yourself is one way. E stands for emotional. And that is connecting and talking with somebody who you really get on with, you really like, that you're on the same wavelength. Emotional, that sharing of secrets or feelings and bonding. And social is another great one. Volunteer, get out there, give something back to the community. It's another way of feeling good about yourself. So these are not just ways of self-care and they build positive affect, but they are also energizers. So remember our A, B, C, D, E, they also can form energizers which keep your mood buoyed up and boosted. And that can actually make us feel better for putting in all of the other practices, especially if we're not used to doing them. The last couple of things I want to give you, I'm going to share my screen once more, and that is to show you the 10 keys for happiness. This is from Action for Happiness. And again, very much like spices, these are other things that you can explore to make you feel good. Giving, connecting with people, exercising, being more aware of what's going on around you. So walking mindfully or having a wonder walk where you think about what gives you awe, a sense of awe or joy or peace. Trying something new, that's a creative thing. Setting goals, being resilient, you know, finding ways that you can actually make this situation better. Looking for the good things, acceptance, meaning, all of those can help as well. So that's from Action for Happiness, and they are the 10 keys to happiness. That can come under this as well. So this can also be a sense of self-care. Now, as we are getting to the very, very end of this session, I want to close with one more slightly physical exercise. And this is known as the gratitude stretch because it wakes you up and you have been sitting and listening to me for a long time. So I would like you to stretch your arms and just think about one thing that you are grateful for in your life, one thing. Okay, might be your pet, it might be your job, it might be your house, whatever it is. Stretch your legs out and think about one person you are grateful for in your life, whoever that person is. And shake out and think about one thing you're looking forward to today. And I know people are, I know you've all got things to do, and thank you for joining me, but shake out, think about one thing you're looking forward to today. Now, that gratitude stretch has so many benefits. The first is, if you do not have time to journal, then the gratitude stretch can actually work in place of that. You did it with me. It took less than 30 seconds. And it's a really informal way of getting that gratitude into your life. And gratitude's really important because it makes the most of the neuroplasticity of the brain. In other words, it affects the pathways in the brain and it primes us to think more positively. But because I'm a psychologist, I like to find the other benefits of that gratitude stretch. So if you did that gratitude stretch for 7 days, say 7 days, you will notice that certain things come up all the time. Certain people, if you're stretching your legs, come up all the time. And some things and some people do not. Another way of building your sense of positive affect is by physically choosing to spend more time with the people and the things that come up in your gratitude stretch and telling the people and the things that do not, I'm so sorry, I'm already busy. Thank you so much for your time. I will take Q&A, and it's been great to meet you. If you need to go, then please do. But otherwise, thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Audrey. That was amazing. I am sorry, I was just furiously taking notes in the background here as well, so I had to switch my camera on, but that was amazing. You've given us so much. And just to answer people in the chat, yes, the recording will be available on YouTube, and we'll be sending out an email later on with the link as well as Audrey's workbook so that you can use it and get the most out of this session. Again, thank you so much. So we have a couple questions that have been sent into the Q&A, and I can start reading them out actually. So the first one is, can body language hint at what emotion you're feeling?
Yes, it can, but that depends on what your baseline of body language is. So if you read the standard body language books, then you will say something like, you know, this is closed and therefore you don't like that person and all of those things. But alternatively, I stand like this as a matter of course, because I get cold really, really easily. So I'm just like this because I'm cold, and it's not because I'm aggressive. But so be aware of the baseline. But yes, what you will find in terms of body language is, I'm trying to find one of my pens because it's got, my pens have got a clicky lid and I don't have one on me to make the irritating noise, but you know what I'm talking about when it's that click, 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 click.
Yep.
That's body language that can help tell you you're stressed. The shaky, yep. That's the sound. You hear that sound? Someone's stressed. The tapping leg. If you're tapping your hand on your leg or you're tapping your foot on the ground, stress, most likely, because that feeling is something's not relaxed there. So that's how body language can hint at what we're feeling. Tension as well can sometimes hint at it, but you need to know your baseline first. So yes, hopefully that answers your question. So don't do the standard body language stuff.
Brilliant. And now there's one more here. So this person is wondering how to stop worrying so much during pregnancy.
Oh, this is a really difficult one. The one thing I will say is if you're worrying about worrying, then that's actually extra worry. So it might be getting yourself outside your head. And that might be things like, anything on these spices, any of these choices here that you could do, learn something, watch something, read something. Maybe if you work out what it is you're worrying about, you can ask the question, and that can actually, you may not like the answer, but at least you don't make that worry worse and worse and worse. The worst thing about overthinking is it's a little bit like a wax imprint. So if you see on your hand, if you push and push, that's the worry. And it makes an imprint there. But if you actually release that by asking the question or finding out whatever it is you need to know, or to get out of your head in some way, you're going to give yourself a bit of a break. So that's probably the best thing I would say there. Helps.
We've got a couple of questions actually.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll just read them out. So here's one more now. What are the most common challenges you believe students go through regarding emotional management? It's a bit of a broad one, but
it is a broad one, and I would actually say literally the answer is emotional management itself. And the reason for this is, and it's not your fault, the prefrontal cortex, so the frontal lobe, this little bit here, does not develop until you're around 25 years old. And in some of us, I don't think it's developed completely. But what I'm saying is that bit is what controls our executive functions a lot better. That's the bit that allows us to reason and allows us to be more logical about certain things. And so please don't think, oh, I'm flying off the handle, or I'm doing all of these things and there's something wrong with me. No, it's just not quite there yet, and that's okay. So probably one of the problems is more students think I must control that, or I must push that away. We're doing this the whole time, remember, and that's actually not helpful. So I'd say that was the bigger problem, is how we deal with emotions rather than the emotion that creeps up on us. So don't choose negative ways of self-soothing, because that's not healthy.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So here's someone else. Does trauma impact our emotional regulation? Is it possible to relearn emotional control?
Yes, and yes is the simple answer. If I take you back to, if you remember the window of tolerance, that is from trauma research. So they talk about the window of tolerance being the amount of arousal stimulation somebody can cope with. And what happens there is if you have had a really awful traumatic past, so maybe you couldn't rely on your caregivers, or they were abusive, or any of those things, your tolerance is going to be really small, because you're always looking for the next thing to happen, and it's so horrible. But accepting that and seeing that and recognizing that and being mindful of that in others can really help. And then what we do is we start to try and broaden that tolerance by recognizing when people allow you to be authentic, when people mirror you back. Therapy can help that a lot, because it's healthy mirroring. You might go through exercises like the ABCDE exercise. That one's a really good one that's useful. So all of those other exercises can help, but please don't think there's anything wrong with you or anything like that. We just all have different levels of tolerance. But the best thing about the brain is it's dynamic, it's flexible, it can change. So yes, trauma does affect us, but we can do something about it.
So we've got one here that's asking how to stop hating someone whom you help a lot but end up getting complaints from, as they know they're your manager or friend.
Now, if it's about sticking to the facts, actually, there I would say is the easiest. Hate is a little bit like resentment, which is a little bit like revenge. And that the Buddhists will say it's like holding on to a hot stone, waiting to throw it at someone. Your hand is still getting burnt. You are hurting yourself whilst holding on to that hate. I'm not saying, when people say things like forgiveness, I'm not saying forgive to forget what's happened, but I am saying if you can release their control over your emotions, because your emotions are yours, all we can do is manage how we react to them, then that might be the only way to deal with it. You might have to have a stronger dealing with it, which might be, is this really worth staying here in this job? I know it's difficult, cost of living, all of those different things. There may be very good reasons as to why you need to stay, and absolutely. But maybe then, if that's the case, you need to do a little bit more of your spices or something like that, because that can help you create more of a buffer to the stressors that are going on. You cannot, unfortunately, change them. All you can do is change your reaction to them and your response to them.
Absolutely. So there's one question here, which is, when someone is experiencing anxiety, is it helpful to keep asking what worries them or what creates the anxiety, or would it just make it worse and escalate the situation?
If you have time, then asking what's worrying you is really, really helpful, because what we tend to do is we tend to do something called toxic positivity. And that is, someone goes, oh, I'm really rubbish at this, I'm really bad at this, I'm really awful. And we go, no, you're wonderful, you're so good. And that doesn't allow them, it doesn't validate their right to feel that anxiety. So absolutely asking them, I'm really sorry to hear that, why, what's going on, can really help. But if you don't have the time to listen to them at that moment, don't do it then, because they might just open up to you and then you'll be, oh, sorry, I've really got to go. So if you've got the time and the space to do it, ask the question. But if you cannot then help them, you may then need to signpost them on. So that might be signposting them to Mind, or signposting them to the counselling service at the uni, or something like that. So you're not there to solve the problem, but by asking the question, you can find out what's going on and signpost.
Brilliant, makes sense. And there's one more question here, which is there such a thing as healthy anger? If you can't express anger, can this impact you physically?
It's easier to take the second question first, and that is, yes, if you don't express anger, it can absolutely affect you and impact you physically. Because, for example, again, I'll just turn this down a little bit. One of the most common things is people doing this. So your hands are down by your side, but your fists are clenched. That's very unrelaxed. It's very unnatural for your whole body language. And so that will lead to there's tension in your shoulders. It will lead to tension headaches. It will lead to stiff necks. It will lead to back problems, all of those different things. Also, if you continue feeling that anger but don't deal with it, so dealing with it is actually what I would say, rather than express it, is dealing with it in some way. But if you keep containing that, then either it's going to explode because one thing is just going to set you off, or you might end up either completely suppressing something, or people don't even realize that there's something wrong. So it's actually quite important, if you need to contain it and channel it. That's why people go running and swimming and boxing and screaming into pillows. Releasing the energy in some way will really help. And once you've done that in a safe space, then come down and deal with the root of the issue. And that may include speaking to people. It may include actually having to say to them, look, this is what's going on here. And maybe using the house or grace to find a solution for it.
I'm just going to ask one of the pre-submitted questions in between.
Yes.
We have two more just come in, but I'll just ask one of these. Yeah. And so one of the questions was, how does cognitive dissonance affect our emotional behavior?
That's a really nice one. Cognitive dissonance is where you're holding two conflicting views at the same time. For example, I like smoking, but I know that smoking kills. So and it's awkward because you think, oh, I want to continue smoking, but I know it kills. And it affects us because we are holding this conflict within us, this dissonance. It's not sitting right within us. And so one of the things we do, it can lead to bad behaviors or unhealthy behaviors, where we just go, well, okay, I'll just dismiss the research. I just won't care about the research. I'll just smoke anyway. And that's a choice. It will remove the dissonance. Whether it will help you physically and in the long term, that's up to you, but that is a choice that you would make. Alternatively, you might reduce the dissonance by actually saying, well, I'll cut down on smoking. I know it causes me these problems, I'll cut down on it. So that might be another option. But dissonance, that sort of holding those two conflicting views, can cause us to feel in conflict a lot, and that can affect our decisions, because the more we're thinking I'm in conflict, the less headspace we have to make effective decisions.
So in that time, we had 2 more questions. So this one says, my father has the traditional mindset in thinking that showing emotion, e.g. crying, equates to weakness. So how can I explain to him that this is not the case and that different types of emotions are just as valid?
This is a really difficult one because it does depend on the reasons for your father thinking that. Mm-hmm. It can depend on your father's age and it can depend on your father's culture, all of those things. Because if your father, for example, is a narcissist or is on the narcissistic spectrum, he's really unlikely to change. He's really so all you're going to do is you are going to keep on arguing this and you are going to keep on losing. So if you remember what I said right at the beginning, some people have got more experience in behaving badly than we do, and it's just fighting a losing battle, and it's causing us more stress. So the alternative is seeing what sort of relationship you can have with your father instead. It can be recognizing the behaviors that he finds acceptable. Now, bear with me for this because this takes a little bit more explanation. I talked about a concept called mirroring, and what mirroring is with a baby. If a baby falls over and hurts himself, mother goes, oh dear, oh, I'm really sorry. You mirror back the sad emotion that they're expressing, and then you do something about it. Now, for a parent who is crying is weak, the minute you cry, they're not going to mirror that back to you. They're going to say, stop that, cheer up, be happy, whatever they're going to say, calm down. And that lack of mirroring can really end up causing us problems and causing us to feel inauthentic, because we end up as children then only reflecting back to our parents the emotions that are deemed acceptable, and that can be quite difficult. Unfortunately, that can be so embedded in our parents based on their culture. It can be based on their own upbringing. Maybe they never saw emotions as a healthy thing to express. And what we need to do is find our own way of managing this. Now, as a child, it's very difficult. But now, as we're moving into university, we're talking 18-year-old, you're not around your parents the whole time, at least. It might be about finding a way of being able to get on with your father in the times that you meet him. But it's difficult to try and make him change. And in a way, it's a little bit unfair. So as long as you're not having to do this too much yourself and it's not causing you too many problems, then chances are it will, the dissonance there is about inadequate mirroring. But the way you might have to do that is focus more on the people who do give you the healthy mirroring that you need. And then when you see your dad, maybe it will matter less. I'm sorry, that's not a great art. It's not going to solve your problem, but it's not an easy problem to solve, I'm afraid.
But, a brilliant answer nonetheless, I think. So thank you very much, Audrey. So 2 more, and if there are any more questions, this is probably the last few minutes to try and chuck them in. So here's a question. How can I ground myself to stay positive when there is negativity around you? Like negative people and energy that rubs off on you, which, yeah.
Emotional vampires, absolutely, yes. Well, the phrase I've used in the session is, I cannot save people from themselves. I cannot save people from themselves. Now, one of the ways I do it is, if I cannot stop seeing those people because maybe they are relatives or some people I cannot not see, or they are work colleagues or something like that, I will try and minimize my time with them, is try and spend more time with the people who make me feel better and make me feel positive, and go into that interaction with curiosity rather than frustration straight away. So saying to yourself, maybe it won't be so bad, or I wonder if this will be okay today. Asking, curiosity. What if this works? What if this was actually all right? What if I try something completely different with that person? So using curiosity can also make a difference. And sometimes if somebody is really, really negative and you want to call them out on it, maybe asking them that question, either, sorry, could you repeat that, please? Or what did you mean by that? Might make them think twice about what it is they're saying as well. So those are some ways of doing it. I try and minimize my time with them. So.
Probably the easiest way, isn't it? So we've got one more question here, which is, how do you manage conversations with people who like to overly argue their point? This is preventing getting things done and building a working relationship.
I first of all try and put a situation across where they don't have to speak out loud. So rather than doing a call out brainstorm, I might say, write all of your ideas down or something like that, or conduct things over a written format. So that might be something. If you're in a group meeting, having a strong chair to be able to say, okay, let's move on from that. So someone else got any ideas, someone to manage them can be really, really helpful. Acknowledging and moving on is always a good thing, but acknowledge. I know they will have annoyed you anyway, but it is a case of thank you, really great. What does somebody else have to say? So it might be a case of actually just stopping them, acknowledging and moving on. It's sort of known as a passive positive response. The passive positive response is acknowledgement. Oh, that's really great, but then not asking any further questions. The active positive response is that's really great, and what else can you tell me? It's asking further questions. So I would use the passive positive response if you can.
I think this is a follow-up from one of the earlier questions, both of these actually, I think.
Yeah.
So it's, what if your parent didn't do mirroring with you as a child, and how can an adult learn mirroring? I guess they're both linked.
Chances are, if you have noticed that your parent didn't do mirroring with you as a child, you already know how to mirror. I would actually say that, because you will probably be somebody that actually does, when people are upset, you'll be able to go, oh, I'm really sorry, are you okay? And you'll speak to them. So chances are you already know how to do it. If they didn't do it, I say it by means of explaining and helping you understand what might have gone wrong or might have been a problem in the past. All I can say is I'm really sad, and I'm really, really sorry that happened to you. It's a difficult situation. It will be really learning to focus on the people who do help you feel authentic, the ones who do help you feel like yourself, and the ones who do allow you to express your feelings. Maybe if it wasn't your parent, you had an aunt, or you had a friend, or you had somebody who did give you that nurturing and that support that you need, that recognition that you need. Worst comes to worst, it might be something you need to discuss in therapy. Unfortunately, this is not the time nor the place to be able to give you a full answer, because this is veering into the therapeutic sphere.
We've got one more thing. Oh, that's just a thank you. And so we've got one last question, which was a pre-submitted question. It's quite an interesting question, so I'll read this one out to you, Audrey. I've had romantic feelings for a friend for quite a while, but they don't seem to feel the same. I am finding it hard to deal with my emotions, and it's starting to affect my studies. What can I do?
Ouch. I'm really, really sorry to hear that. I am really sorry to hear that. Like I said, with these negative people in our lives, all we can do is change our reaction. You cannot necessarily change what somebody else feels or thinks. It's not fair, and we have no right to do that. All we can do is change our reaction and our response to it. If you're in a bit of a limbo, in other words, you're on a hook, then maybe you need to ask that question. You need to ask that question to get a definite, are we going somewhere or are we not? And as painful as it is to know that answer, at least you have a decision that's made for you that you can move forward from. It's the limbo is actually worse than having an answer. But if you know already what the answer is, then it is a case of getting yourself outside your head and focusing on all the other things, because what you can be doing whilst you're focusing on this one person's a little bit like this, it's that blinkered effect again. You're missing out on all the other people who might actually be better for you. And the one thing I will take away, and it's one of my favorite songs, it's Garth Brooks's Unanswered Prayers. Sometimes what doesn't work out for us is actually a blessing in the long run.
Absolutely. Audrey, thank you so much. As always, it's always a pleasure to have you on, always super informative. And as I said, I was furiously taking notes in the background, so I've got loads to go through as well. So once again, thank you for taking your time and giving us such a wonderful presentation. And thank you to all our attendees who came in as well. As I said, keep an eye out on your mailbox. We'll be sending out a link to the video as well as Audrey's workbook. And the links to your books I will put into the email as well, and it's in the chat in case anyone missed it. And hopefully we'll see you again, Audrey. Thank you so much for everything, and from looking from all the feedback inside the chat as well, it looks like it was fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Have a really healthy rest of the week. Take care.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Bye, everyone. Goodbye. Have a great day. Bye-bye.